Software distribution, part 2, the science. Okay, so our last nugget really focused on the art of software distribution, and really that kind of laser focused in on the repackaging process and the way that you convert existing software media into the type of install that can be done through Configuration Manager. And now that we sort of understand how that works and how we can repackage that software, we have to then ingest that into our Configuration Manager infrastructure so that we can actually then distribute the software. And that's what we're really going to do in this process. We call it the science because this is involved a lot more of the clicky of going into the interface and actually making sure that that software is going to be distributed properly. In this nugget, we're going to talk about the distribution points and how we can manipulate and manage distribution points, and we're going to talk about the process of creating packages and programs and advertisements. We talked about that a little bit in the last nugget, but now we're actually going to create these components. We're also going to talk about these branch distribution points too, which are special types of distribution points that are used in branch office environments. I want to first start by bringing up an image that we brought up in the last nugget, and not that we want to repeat what we were saying there, but really that it's just to hone in that these 4 components are what come together to really equal change events on your clients. The first is the package and the program, and that package is essentially that collection of files and data that you need to get put onto a client, and the program is that string of that initialization string that sets that package going. Maybe it's an install string, or maybe it's some other sort of command that you would normally run from the command line. This is what needs to run silently so that the clients don't see it whenever it actually runs. And we also have the advertisement that's the when component. That's the what time or what window of opportunity do you want to actually deploy that software? And then we have the collection, which we talked about in a long time ago in a nugget, where we determine which systems we want to apply that package to, and the combination of these is what equals that change event. Maybe it's a software installation, maybe it's a configuration change. Maybe it's one of a number of things that we want to do to make change on our clients. Now, there's a couple of things that we need to do first before we can actually create packages and softwares and advertisements so that we can verify positively that our clients and our server, our site system, are both ready for distributing software. The first thing we want to do here inside of the Configuration Manager console under Client Agents is look at the Advertised Programs Client Agent. Now, you've already looked at this before in a previous nugget where we talked about the client agents because, again, this is the location where we instruct the client to prepare itself for deploying software, for example. We want to make sure that this checkbox is checked that allows the client to enable software distribution. We can also set a few settings here if we want to allow user targeting as opposed to computer targeting of advertisements. And what we're saying here is if I'm going to push a software distribution out to my environment, do I want to target it to specific users or do I want to target it to specific computers? This allows the users to be done. I can also enable program notification icons in Add Remove Programs. If I want my users to be able to go to Add Remove Programs to actually add programs, I can check the box here as well. Under the Notification tab, I can choose how I want to notify my clients that some advertised programs are available. Maybe I want to display a message or play a sound, or maybe I want to provide a countdown when the program is about to be run. As we talk about advertisements here in a few minutes, you'll understand sort of what this means when we talk about advertising a program to a particular client. It appears here that our client agent is set up correctly to support software distribution, so we know that this is done correctly. The next thing we want to do is here under Site Systems, and this is right now our only system in our environment. This is sccm nugget. We want to make sure that our site system distribution point is also configured appropriately. We're going to view the properties on this distribution point role, and we're going to look to verify that this distribution point is set as a standard distribution point. Now you'll see here that we have really 2 options, 2 radio buttons, the one up here and the one down here. A standard distribution point supports all the normal functionality of server-based software distribution. As you can see here, it's native mode operation, internet-connected clients, bits, transfers, those sorts of things. But in some cases, we may have clients that are sitting at the opposite end of a wide area network, maybe in a branch office somewhere, and there's a small number of clients in that office, and we want those clients to also be part of our Configuration Manager infrastructure, but we don't want to put a site server down there. It's expensive to put a site server in those branch offices, right? We got to pay for the server, we got to pay for a site server license and those sorts of things. In that case, we can actually enable another machine, maybe it's a server, maybe it's even a high-end workstation down in that site, to be what we call a branch distribution point. Now, this branch distribution point allows us to push software down to it and use this system as the central locus, if you will, of all the clients that are sitting inside of that environment. So in that branch office, maybe I got 10 clients in that branch office, and there we can promote, if you will, one of those clients to becoming a branch distribution point. And now we actually store some of the files associated with distributing software onto that client. Now this is great because in the old days in SMS, we didn't have this functionality. In order to support branch offices, we actually had to go and install an SMS server down there, which again got relatively expensive. If we click this button here, it will actually enable that machine as a branch distribution point. You'll see here we want to confirm the change because changing it from standard to branch, it's difficult to go back from branch back to standard without removing the role first. In our case, we don't want to make it a branch distribution point because it's our site server. This is not in a branch office. By setting it as a standard distribution point, then we get all the fun functionality that we're used to. We can also here in the communication settings allow the clients to transfer content from this distribution point using bits, HTTP, HTTPS for various types of clients. In this case, we're going to just use the standard bits transfer for transferring files back from clients to our server. We can also choose group memberships here if we have groups of distribution points as well. So in this case, we want to be a standard distribution point because we're going to be doing normal types of things within a local area network. The other thing we can do under site system is choose properties here. By choosing properties under our site system, we get to choose also what we could want to set the site system as, whether a normal site system or what we call a protected site system. Now, think about certain environments inside of your network. Maybe you have some of those, maybe not branch offices, but maybe areas inside your network that may have clients, and maybe those clients are roaming about for some reason. Maybe they're laptops and they move from area on your network to other area on your network. In certain cases, we may want to set a site system as a protected site system to essentially set a much thicker boundary in terms of when those clients can actually get information and send information to our site server. By specifying a boundary, a protected boundary for the site system, we are saying that clients that are outside of those boundaries will not be able to receive packages and will not be able to update state information. And what this says is, so if I've got a client that's roaming around my network, if I've got a big network, and if it's not within the boundary that I have assigned, it's way out on the wide area network somewhere, it's not actually going to update Configuration Manager or receive packages until it returns to that boundary. That boundary can either be an IP range, an IP subnet, or even an Active Directory site that we've configured previously. So what this allows us to do is further protect those site systems from having to deploy software over the wide area network or having to take client updates over the wide area network by setting this as a protected boundary. In our case, we're going to leave it as a standard boundary because we're not really concerned. This is all in one local area network, and we're only deploying to systems in the local area network. So we'll save this as a regular site system in this case. It looks like because of this that we've actually configured our site systems correctly. We have one more thing that we want to do in order to ensure that we're successfully deploying software, and that's to look under here under component configuration. Under component configuration, we have this element called software distribution, which allows us to set how we want or where we want our software distribution stored packages to come from, and also some additional settings here. Now this is a virtual machine, and so it's relatively small in this test environment, and so our drive and our site server where our stored packages is stored is in the C:\/ location. You may want to, in your site systems, create a different drive so that you can fill it up and not have to worry about filling up your system partition. You may want to create a D drive or an E drive with which to store your packages, but that's up to you. Under the distribution point node, we can make some changes here in terms of how we want to set concurrent distribution settings, maximum number of packages that are concurrently running, and maximum threads for packages that are currently running, and also some retry settings associated with the clients and as they're trying to attempt to get new package information. We'll talk a little bit later on about when we have Configuration Manager hierarchies. In this case, we can check this box to tell the hierarchy to send the package only from the nearest neighbor. And so if we have a large hierarchy in our Configuration Manager infrastructure with lots of site servers, in this case, this says that we're going to send that package instead of sending it way over the wide area network, we're actually sending it from the one that's closest to it. So it appears here also that our software distribution properties are set correctly. We can begin now the process of deploying software through Configuration Manager. Now, in order to deploy software using Configuration Manager, we're actually going to scroll down here to the Software Distributions node. Under the Software Distribution node, one of the things that's new with Configuration Manager we didn't get before with SMS is this home page, this sort of dashboard, if you will, that talks a lot about what's going on with software distribution. Right now, we don't have any advertisements currently active right now, so we're not seeing much. And there's no values here to show in the chart, but as we begin deploying software, we will be able to see what our active advertisements are and some information about them, how well they're doing, and what percentage completion they are here. If we right-click on this software distribution mode, we can either schedule or run run that homepage summarization so we can see kind of, well, get us ourselves a warm fuzzy about how well our active advertisements are doing at this point. In our case, what we're interested in seeing is actually packages here. And what we're going to do first is actually create a package. Now, as I said before, the package that we're going to create is an Adobe Acrobat package. And the one thing I want to show you here, if I minimize this right here, you'll see I've actually downloaded the Adobe Reader software right off of the internet. And this is a version of Adobe Reader. It's Adobe Reader 8.1.2. And in our case, we want to deploy this to systems on our network. Now, what we want to do first of all, in order to be able to do this, is we want to create a location on our drive which contains source files, which contains essentially the media, if you will, for installing this software. In our case, what we want to do is we're going to cut this out first, and we're going to paste it into a location that I've already created here called source files. Now, you can create this from wherever you want, but it just needs to be a location that's on one of your servers somewhere. It doesn't necessarily even need to be the configuration manager server, but it's on one of your servers where you'll be storing the source files that Configuration Manager will then use to deploy its software. Now I'm going to create a folder, a subfolder here, and we're going to call it Acrobat 8. And within that folder, we're actually going to paste the source files that we've created. Here's our executable file here. We know that we need to actually run this executable on those systems that we want to deploy the software to, and so we're creating a location where Configuration Manager will know that it can find these source files as we begin to create the package. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down. It's very important that when you create this location also, that you create a location that is accessible by the Configuration Manager server. In our case, I chose properties here, and under sharing, you'll see that I've enabled a share of this folder, and under permissions, I've allowed the sccm Nugget server itself full control of the share. I've done the same thing here under security to ensure that sccm Nugget, the server itself, has the ability to pull information from this share. So be aware when you're creating the software files location that the Configuration Manager server is going to want to have access to be able to use it. Once we've done this, actually, I want to go back to that app deploy website that we talked about in the last nugget. We want to install the package using a number of command lines. You'll see here that /s ALL is used as the silent mode for the product. And you'll see that /RS actually suppresses any reboots that may be required by the product. And also /MSI adds any command line parameters associated with the MSI file, because this is an MSI file wrapped in an executable file. There's also an example up here of the silent strings that we may want to use to install this package as well. And so we don't actually need to repackage it necessarily. We just need to provide additional commands at the command line to ensure that this installs quietly, so that it installs without actually giving any prompts to the users. So we know that because we've done a little research associated with this package that we want to deploy at this point. At this point now, what we want to do is create a new package. We're going to do this first by right-clicking on Packages and choosing New Package. In this package, we have to give it a name. We'll say Adobe Acrobat in version 8.1.2. The manufacturer is Adobe. In fact, we may just want to get rid of Adobe up here. The language is English, and we don't necessarily have a comment. The only thing that's required in this case is the name. The other ones are actually optional, but you want to use these as part of the package so that you can later on go and see inside the package of what you've actually deployed. This will also populate inside of the registry later on too if you want to query the registry for what packages have been installed. We choose Next, and then we choose a data source. This package contains data source files, and we want to choose a source directory for where we're going to pull those files from. What Configuration Manager is going to do is actually take the file from this source directory, do a little bit of internal work to the file itself, and then store it into another location, a separate location, where the clients will pull from. That separate location is a hidden share called SMSPKG, and then a drive letter indicator, and then a $sign. And so in our case, because our source files location, or excuse me, where our drive is, we only have one drive on this system, that location is going to be sccm Nugget, SMSPKG, and then the letter C because it's the C drive, and the $sign. So we'll actually go to that in a little bit later as we create the package and where we can see what it's actually done with this with the files that we've pulled from our source directory. But be aware that this hidden $share is created by Configuration Manager as the location, the actual location where clients go to pull down the source file information. In our case, we wanted to contain source files, and we want to point those source files to the directory that we created on our system. Even though it's a local drive on the drive server, we may want to create a network path to it. Maybe it's on a file share somewhere. Maybe it's on another server somewhere. In our case, this source directory is actually a local drive on the site server, and if we go drill down through C and then our source files location, and there's Acrobat 8. There's the location where we've stored our Acrobat files. We're going to click OK here, and we can choose if we want to use a compressed copy or just always obtain files from the source directory anytime that we update this distribution point. If we have a source that doesn't really change all that much, maybe we want to just use a compressed copy. If that source changes from time to time, we may want to choose to always obtain those files from the source directory. We can even update our distribution points on a schedule. If we know that we're going to be repeatedly pushing out a package, for example, maybe it's an update that we push out once a month and we just set a recurring advertisement for that package, we can choose to update the distribution points every day or every week or even once a month so that we know every time that the advertisement automatically runs, that it will automatically grab the distribution point from, grab the software from the source locations on a schedule. This schedule is independent of the advertisement, but at least we can now align the two so we know our distribution points are correct. Now, in our case, this is going to be a pretty static installation, so we don't need to update the distributions on points on a schedule. Later on, we can choose to manually update them if we want. We can choose to persist the content in the client cache. Now, this is a very important thing if we want to, after we've deployed the package, to keep that content in the client cache. Now, the client cache is only a small amount of location. There's only a small amount of data that's available there, and if we persist that client in the client cache, then that leaves less available space there for the clients to use. If we don't persist it, once the package has been installed, actually that source information is going to be removed from the client cache. We can enable binary differential replication. If we make changes to our source files and we want to update them to our distribution points, and they're only a very small changes to them, instead of updating the entire location, we could update just what the binary bits that are different between the earlier version and the new version of the package. In our case, again, this is a very static package, so we don't need to select this. We'll choose Next. We can choose how do we want our clients to be able to access the package that we want to deploy. In our case, we can access the distribution folder through the common package share. That's that SMS PKG C $ share. Or we can share the distribution folder itself and provide a share name here. In most cases, you're going to choose to allow the clients to access the distribution folder through the common package share. We can choose when we're updating that package, do we want to disconnect any users as part of that package update? As if we have to update that package regularly and users are actually having active advertisements on there, do we want to disconnect those users before we do the update to make sure that the update is clean whenever it actually completes? In our case, again, this is a static update. We choose Next. For distribution settings, this is if we want to distribute this package from this server to other servers in a configuration manager hierarchy. If we want to choose a sending priority associated with that distribution, maybe this is a low priority package, maybe other packages are higher priority. Do we have a sender? We'll talk about senders when we talk about hierarchies later on. If we're using those branch distribution points, do we want to allow clients to automatically download content when packages, we want to allow those branch distribution points to automatically download clients when they're assigned to branch distribution points, or do you want as an administrator to manually copy that package to branch distribution points? Remember, those branch distribution points are at the other end of a wide area network, and so if you automatically allowed content to be downloaded, there's the chance that you may actually saturate that bandwidth. So you have to be very careful of when you're deploying that branch distribution content. Now, that being said, we're using bits, so bits should throttle itself appropriately, but this is all up to you as to how you want to deploy that to your branch distribution points. We can choose how we want to do reporting. Earlier we showed how we entered into the package information about the name and the version and the publisher associated with that package. We can either use that package properties for matching status MIFs, or we can use independent fields that we create that's separate for the package. These MIFs are used later on for querying or for understanding what the status is of that package as well. In our case, because we've populated the package properties, we're just going to go ahead and use those package properties for the status MIFs. It also helps us for later troubleshooting. troubleshooting as well. We can talk about security. Do we want to change security rights, either class or instance security rights? That's not something we want to deal with here. We'll deal with that in a later nugget. And then lastly, we have the summary. When we click next here, it's going to finish the progress and actually create a new package. In our case, once we choose close, you'll see under packages now that we have our Acrobat package that we've created. Acrobat manufacturer Adobe in the version 8.1.2, and then there's the package ID for it as well. If we want, we can choose properties of that package and actually change some of the parameters that we've set before associated with those. These parameters are very similar to what we've already seen inside of the package creation tool. In some cases, you may have a package that arrives with what's called a package definition file. And if that package arrives with a package definition file, you may be able to automatically populate or suck in that package along with its definitions right into Configuration Manager. Typically, you'll get a package definition file if a vendor happens to deliver one with the package. That actually happens relatively rarely. What happens more often is when your repackager tool provides that package definition file so that you don't have to enter in this information twice. So be aware that those package definition files may be available for your packages, and that just makes the process of ingesting it into Configuration Manager that much easier. Now that we've created our package, if you remember the package is the software, we need now to create the program. And the program is more or less the command line that we use to instantiate or to start that package running. If we go ahead and click down here under packages, you'll see the package that we've created, Adobe Acrobat 8.1.2 in English. We have the access accounts, which is the security, the users and the groups that have the rights to actually do something with that. We have the distribution points, which we'll talk about in a second. Those are the distribution points that we will actually house that package on, where the clients will go to get that package. And then we have the program. And what we want to do first is actually right-click to create a new program. The first thing we want to do is give it a name, Adobe Acrobat 8.1.2 install. We can provide a comment if we want, and then now we need to provide a command line. The command line is going to be essentially what we would type in at the command line in order to get this package to do its installation silently. In order to do that, we need to type in what the command line that we want. In order to do that, we will be ADBE RDR812 underscore EN underscore US.exe. That's the executable that we've already installed to our source files location. And then we do the /s all switch to install it silently, and the /rs switch to say don't reboot whenever the installation is complete. And then /msi and then a quote. And then what we want to do is EULA underscore accept. EPT equals yes. This says go ahead and accept the EULA without prompting me for it. And then all users equals 2 because we want to install it to allow all users to make use of this package. Now you're probably wondering, well, how did we get this? We got this because we went to a place like apt deploy, or we went and did a little research with our package so that we know that this will install it with the proper command lines, we'll install it with the configuration that we want, and we'll do so quietly. We can start it in a particular location if we want. We can choose how we want to run it. Do we want to run it normal or minimized or maximized, or do we want to hide any potential screens that may arrive? Now you may say, well, wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to get rid of the screens as part of the repackaging process. In some cases, you may not be able to get rid of some of those splash screens. In that case, you may want to choose it to run it as hidden, so those splash screens get run in a hidden format, so that even if they do appear, that the user will not be able to see them. After the package is completed running, do we want no action to occur? Do we want to restart the computer? Do we want the program to restart the computer? Or do we want the configuration manager to log the user off? Now you'll see up here we use the RS switch, which instructs the package to suppress any reboots. If we hadn't have done that, then the program would have restarted the computer. We need to let configuration manager know if the program is going to restart the computer. Because if it doesn't, our status messages will show that a program attempted to restart the computer when it wasn't instructed to, and it can throw off some of our metrics. In our case, what we want to do is instruct the program to actually suppress the reboot and allow Configuration Manager to restart the computer after the installation is complete. In this case, now that we know that the installation is fully completed, when Installation Manager recognizes that the package is then complete, it then will go and restart the computer. Lastly, if we want to provide a category for this program, if we set up categories associated for how we want to deploy different types of software, we can do that as well. We click the next button, And then we get to the option to choose requirements. What this does is it allows us to choose an estimate for how much disk space and runtime should be required in order to finish that package. Again, this is just for statusing, so we know whether or not the amount of time has elapsed and too much time has elapsed, or we can also then see how much disk space we think is going to be required by the package. This disk space may take, 50 megabytes. And if we put in 50 megabytes, we'll know that before we attempt to deploy this software, if we don't at least have that amount of disk space on the system, that we may have some problems with the installation of the package. We can also choose to whether we want that package to run on, or that program to run on any platform, or whether we want to choose specific client platforms to run it on. If we know that this package will fail if it hits a Windows XP system, we want to make sure that XP systems are eliminated from this package from being able to run on it. So we can choose maybe specific client platforms here. In our case, Acrobat really runs on any platform, so we don't need to limit it to specific client platforms here. We can choose additional requirements down here in this box by punching in additional requirements as necessary. We click the next button, and we can choose when that program is supposed to run. We can choose whether it's run whenever a user is logged in, is not logged in, or whether or not the user is logged in. In a lot of cases with software installations, it's a best practice for you to only install them when no user is logged into the system. This ensures that the package will run with the correct rights and will not impact the user whenever they're doing their thing throughout the day. If they're actually working on something and you try to install a piece of software, it can maybe interfere with their workday. So in our case, we want to choose only when no user is logged in and run with administrative rights. If that package requires a UNC name, or requires a drive letter, or even requires a specific drive letter in order to function, we can choose how we want that to occur. This is going to be based on how we've repackaged it. Some older software, some software that doesn't have really good installation routines, may require it to be installed from a particular drive letter. And what this does is this more or less spoofs the drive letter so that the software will install correctly. In our case, we can run it with a UNC name because Acrobat Reader will install correctly if run from a UNC path. We choose Next. And we can choose any advanced functions associated with this program. There's the concept of linking together different packages. Maybe you need to run a program that uninstalls a package or uninstalls a piece of software before you can run the program that installs a piece of software. In that case, you would say instruct the latter package to run a different program first. In this case, we would choose another package and choose the program associated with that package so that we would ensure that the linkages between packages would occur. If we have multiple, maybe we have 3 or 4 different linked packages that need to occur, in each package we would need to choose which one should happen before that one actually can run. Configuration Manager will look at these linkages and make sure that before it installs a required package, that it will ensure that all the prerequisite packages are installed first. We can choose to run once for the computer. We can choose to suppress program notifications when programs are assigned. We can choose when disable programs, whether it's displayed or not. Do we want to disable the programs where it's advertised? Do we want to allow the programs to be installed from the install software task sequence if we're doing this as part of an operating system install? All of these are more advanced features if we're wanting to do more advanced ways of deploying software out to our clients. We click Next here, and we can choose whether or not we want to implement product codes from the Windows installer from the Windows MSI file. If we're deploying this package as part of an MSI file, we can actually include the product code and the installer file here for maybe repair actions. If the self-healing components of Windows Installer needs to go through and make some fixes to an installation that has had problems. If we have Microsoft Operations Manager or System Center Operations Manager in our environment, we can disable mom alerts while the program runs. Maybe the program's running and it may generate mom alerts, which alerts to our help desk or to our mom console. We want to make sure that those don't occur. We can say, okay, we want to generate an alert if the program fails so that we'll know in Operations Manager when that program has failed. If you don't have Operations Manager in your environment, then both of these checkboxes are not going to do much for you. We click Next, and this shows us the summary of what we selected, and then we choose Next to actually begin the creation of the program. By clicking Close now, you'll see that we've created a program associated with this package. We now have the program that instructs this software to begin its installation. The next thing we need to do is actually give it a distribution point. Right now, we haven't really copied this program anywhere. We have not made it available for our clients to be able to download it. By right-clicking distribution points and choosing new distribution points, we can now choose where we want the package to be available. In our case, we only have one distribution point, which is sccm nugget, so we'll actually copy that package to that SMS PKGE or PKGC dollar location on that distribution point. Until we do this, we cannot advertise the package because there's no software there. There's no bits to be installed. So we click next here, and that actually begins the process of copying that to our distribution point. The actual process of copying that from our source files location to our distribution point is a background process. So you'll see we set it to go to a distribution point, but really nothing happened. We can validate that this has actually been created and pushed to a distribution point by clicking on Start, clicking on Run, and then going to sccm nugget, the SMS PKG C dollar. Again, yours may be E or F or another drive letter here, but ours is the C dollar location. If we click OK, you'll see here that the package name here, CBN and 4 zeros and a 3, in there now has the Acrobat Reader software. Our clients can now access this through our standard distribution point share, which is up here. So we're pretty much ready to begin advertising this package because make it available to the clients on our network. If we go down here to advertisements now and we right click, we can create a new advertisement. This new advertisement essentially defines the window of time that we want to deploy this software to our clients. So we're going to create this advertisement and call it Acrobat Reader 8.1.2 to desktops. We can provide a package. We have to give it the package name that we want. That's the package that we created, Adobe Acrobat 8.1.2. And there's only one program associated with this package. There can be multiple programs associated with the same package. Maybe you have one program that installs it with all the options. Maybe you have another program that installs it with only a few options. Maybe you have a third program that uninstalls it. So one package can have multiple programs if you want. And then lastly, we have to choose a collection that we want to deploy the software to. If we choose the Browse button here, we have all the collections that we created in one of our previous nuggets. The one that we're interested in here are systems with client installed. Now we know that our client systems with Word 2007 are our desktops because we wouldn't have Word installed on our servers. So let's go ahead and deploy to this collection here. You may want to create a special targeted collection that is very, very specific to the machines that you want, and that's the extensibility of Configuration Manager. We can create any kind of collection that we want in order to deploy this software. We just seem to have this collection available, and it's easy, and it's already pre-targeted to what we want it to. So in this case, we'll choose OK. We choose Next, and that gives us a schedule for when we want to start the advertisement. Do we want to start the advertisement immediately? Maybe it's right now. This is actually right now today. Do we want to expire the advertisement after a period of time? Do we want to say, all right, this advertisement is only going to run from today until, about 6 months from today? We can do that as well. Do we want to provide any mandatory assignments? And this is very, very critical. If you don't provide mandatory assignments, the software is not going to install onto machines automatically. It'll have to wait for users to actually install the software for you. So in a lot of cases, if you want to force that assignment, if you want to force that software to be installed, you'll want to create a mandatory assignment. You can do a couple of different things with mandatory assignments. You can choose a schedule for when you want that assignment to occur, that software installation to occur, or you can say, assign it immediately after this event. Assign it as soon as possible when that user is logged off and actually ready, the package is ready to be deployed. Or we can choose at log on or at log off. In our case, let's go ahead and assign it to a schedule, but let's make the schedule right now. So what this says is we're going to start the package, the advertisement now, and we're going to say as soon as it starts, it is now immediately mandatory here at 12:35 a.m. We can choose Wake on LAN. Maybe if our systems are powered off, do we want to ensure that those systems are powered on by waking them up using Wake on LAN features? Do we want to ignore maintenance windows when running the program? We have the ability to set up maintenance windows for when software will get deployed to systems. Do we want to ignore those maintenance windows because this program is particularly important? Also, do we want to allow system restart outside those maintenance windows? Because we want to make sure, because this is a very, very important package and we don't really care about our maintenance workers, we just want to get it onto our systems. What is a priority? priority for this package? Is this, if we have multiple advertisements going against a system at once, do we want this one to be a high priority or to run earlier, or a low priority or to run later? By default, we always choose the medium priority in here unless that needs to be of a higher or lower priority. Once it's done, if there needs to be if the program needs to be rerun, do we rerun if there's a failed previous attempt? Do we say never rerun? Do we always rerun the program? If you think about it, in some cases you may want to deploy, maybe not software, but you may want to deploy a tool that runs on and compares what's going on with the system and provides some reports about the system. In that case, we may want to rerun that package over and over again because we're still providing additional data out of it. In this case, we may always want to rerun the program. In that case, we're just doing a software installation, and if it ran, then we don't want to rerun it. If it failed, we do want to rerun it. So we can choose rerun if failed previous attempt, so that we know that once it's installed, it's not going to attempt to rerun against those clients. We can choose next and choose what sort of distribution points we want to go. Do we want to download the content from a distribution point and run locally, or do we want to run the program from a distribution point? This is very important depending on the size of the package. If we download the content from the distribution point and run locally, all of that content will come down via bits first and then execute locally. This is good for larger packages because then we are ensured that the entire content is downloaded locally and will run successfully. For smaller packages, we can actually just run the program from a distribution point if we want. If a client is connected with a slow or unreliable network boundary, then do we want to run the program or do we want to download the content? So maybe we've got a laptop that's maybe having a bad connection today, and we know that because of that bad connection, it may not be able to run that program directly from the distribution point. In that case, go ahead and download it first and then run it, because Bits has the ability to start and stop the stream if there are network hiccups or network problems that occur. Do we want to allow clients to fail back to unprotected distribution points if they're away from their protected distribution points? So maybe this is another important package, and even if the clients are away from their protected distribution point, do we want them to still run the package via the nearest unprotected distribution point? We choose next. Do we want the user to be able to interact with the package? Do we want to allow users to run the program independently of assignments? Do we want to display any reminders? Do we want any custom countdown notifications? Essentially, do we want the users to see that that package is being actively deployed to their system? In a lot of cases, no, because you don't want your users to really be aware that you're deploying things in the background. Also, because we're deploying this package when users are logged off, it's really unnecessary for us to have interaction because it will only run when a user is logged off. We have our typical security screen here, and then we have the summary, and we will complete the installation of the advertisement, or the creation of the advertisement. I'm going to go ahead and click close here, and you'll see that now we have an advertisement assigned for this package. There's the name, the package, the program, and the collection it is assigned to, when it is available, when it expires, and what the advertisement ID is. If we right-click, we can choose to disable this program if we want, or even rerun the advertisement if we want to completely rerun the advertisement against all the targeted systems. This allows us to, maybe we screwed it up the first time, and we've made some changes to the program. We wanted to say, okay, clear out all of the, whether it's been reran or not, and rerun it entirely on all of the targeted systems. So what we've done now is we've configured the package, we've configured the program, we used an available collection, and now we've created the advertisement. Per our little icon that we showed up here, our little picture that we showed up here, we've now configured each of these 4 components that we need to actually initiate this change event on the targeted clients. Your final question you're going to ask me has to do with, well, how do I know that it actually has occurred? How do I know that I've been successful in deploying this package? Well, let's go ahead and minimize this back and go back to our Configuration Manager console here. And if you go down to System Status, you'll see that we have a number of status messages associated with advertisements and packages and even the site systems itself. If we start with the package status here, if we look for available packages on our system, here's our Adobe Acrobat package that we installed. There's the source version, there's the version date, and now you'll see here that actually one site system has been targeted and one has successfully installed. Now that we know that we have a successfully installed package to a site system, if we scroll down here, we can see a little bit more information about that individual package as well, the Adobe Acrobat package, and then also essentially what distribution points are currently having that package installed to it as well. So here within package status, we can get a positive verification that we indeed have the package in the right location. But what we're more interested in really is the advertisement itself. itself. So if we click up under advertisement status, we can learn a little bit more about how the clients are dealing with the package itself. Now you'll see under advertisement status, we have a list of our advertisements. In this case, there's only one. One client has received the advertisement. There have been no failures, but no programs have started, and no program errors, and no program successes, for example. This gives us the status about how many of those clients that we've targeted have actually received the package, begun the package, finished the package, and maybe caused some errors or successes associated with it. Now, if you remember that sometimes it takes a period of time for clients to update their policy information, for them to download the package information, and for them to actually begin the process of installing the package. And so, because it's been so quickly since we actually created the advertisement, we haven't yet completed the installation of the software onto the client. If we right-click on any one of these status messages, we can show messages associated with this advertisement. You can see here that we've had an audit and 3 milestone events talking about sccm Nugget more or less setting the package up, and then also our client Nugget 1 here, who is receiving the package presently. This lets us know that Nugget 1 is in the process of actually receiving the package, and we have a little description of what the message is right here associated with that package. In our case, the content for this package is currently being downloaded into the computer's cache, so we know that the process of distributing this package is occurring appropriately inside of our Configuration Manager console. So we can use this advertisement status information to give us better knowledge about what the success rate is for deploying our package as we go throughout time and watch our clients. So what have we talked about in this nugget? We've talked about essentially the science associated with distributing software to clients on our systems. We went through an entire very long example of how you can deploy Acrobat, including all of its silent switches and everything onto machines. We talked about distribution points and branch distribution points, and then the process of creating packages, programs, and advertisements, all that come together to equal that change event on a client system. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.